to coverage of MXP Tacoma, the modern 20K headliner. We're down to the top 4, which means the 4 players that you're about to see have all notched their ticket to the United States Regional Championships in Atlanta coming up this December. So congratulations to all of our remaining competitors. For our main feature, we're going to watch the 2 players that we saw advance in last round's feature matches. They're both playing Rakdos Evoke. It is Connor McKenzie versus Bradley Brown. I'll mention real quickly, the other side of the bracket is a 4-color Omnath mirror match. So our finals will presumably be Rakdos against Omnath. But very close to 75 card mirror match. Noah, what are you thinking about the way Rakdos matches up against Rakdos?
I mean, notably, the only real differences that I'm noticing in the list is Bradley decided to play 2 copies of Blood Moon in his main deck, doesn't have any copies of Seasoned Pyromancer, whereas Connor has, 1 copy of Blood Moon and then 1 copy of Seasoned Pyromancer. Basically, everything else is exactly the same. So it's about as close to a mirror match as you could get. It's going to really come down to, who's keeping a 7, who has the interaction for the opponent's, turn 1 possible grief, bring it back, So, I mean, I would say more than anything, Fury is going to play a really, really huge role in this matchup specifically. There's going to be a lot of, needing to answer these creatures. And also when you think about it, just these 2 copies of Terminate is what is going to deal with, a Fury brought into play plus an Undying Malice or a Feign Death. So I guess or a Fury, right? So but that is only, 6 cards to deal with these resolved Furies. So I think the matchup could really come down to something like that.
All right, so we're going to keep an eye on Fury advantage here in the Rakdos mirror match. Fair to say Blood Moon is a weak card, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine Blood Moon mattering very much. there could be some draws that it shuts off, but if I was playing a Rakdos Evoke mirror match, I think that would be one of the first cards I reach to sideboard out. It doesn't do particularly much.
So this is Connor with a pretty... Is that Connor or is that Bradley? I'm sorry, I mixed up the players.
We had Connor here with taking a mulligan on the play.
Okay, so Connor has kept sort of a bread and butter mid-range hand where it's just going to be Thoughtseize into some creatures. And that, that's fine. This is a matchup where I think the mid-range stuff is going to overperform relative to the, we'll call it scam stuff. Because, you're slightly less likely to run away with the game just on the back of a turn 1 elemental in the face of all this heavy disruption, and instead you're going to want to settle into games where cards like Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Orcish Bowmasters, those are playing big roles.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Reed. It's going to be much more of a mid-range matchup. We'll probably see, in this game 1, these Feign Deaths and these Undying Malices used sort of more to protect creatures from opposing removal spells than they would be used to sort of set up a double Fury turn, sort of set up, a double Grief turn.
Pretty interesting Thoughtseize decision there from Connor's perspective, because Bradley kept the 1-land hand, multiple Thoughtseizes of his own, and then it's kind of a question of how far in the future do you want to think about? If you're thinking about 20 turns in the future, the Fable of the Mirror Breaker is scary, but also Bradley has to pick up multiple lands before that enters the equation. So Connor deciding to take Orcish Bowmasters, now getting Thoughtseized, and his Dothy Voidwalker hits the bin.
Connor is deciding, my Bowmasters in play, in my hand are basically all that I have going for me. This Bowmaster's not something that I love to see, but I don't think Connor is going to be too happy to find out that Bradley's drawn 2 lands in a row for these past 2 draw steps, unlocking this Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
Yeah, so what's Bradley going to do on turn 2? Are you firing off the second Thoughtseize because this might be the last opportunity to get value from it? Are you just playing something proactive to the board? Do you not care much about the Bowmasters because you have Fury at some point later?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. If he has some option like a Dati Voidwalker, I could see wanting to play that here instead of going for the Thoughtseize. That Connor doesn't have very many cards in his hand, so you could expect, possibly for one following turn to get value out of something like a Thoughtseize in your hand. And also, if you're Bradley, yeah, it sucks to have a Thoughtseize just rotting away in your hand, but it also sucks not to use all of your mana every turn. Drawing your second land, having 2 mana to play your 2-drop, it's just really important sometimes to get it out there. So I respect him playing it, especially having this third land, being able to follow it up with a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. And then, at the end of the day, how bad is this Thoughtseize? If it's really bad, the Fable of the Mirror Breaker is likely to resolve, and then we can just pitch this Thoughtseize away on a future turn. So it's not so bad here if you're Bradley, considering the Thoughtseize can be a different card. But you do have to be wary, of these Orcish Bowmasters. You know that Connor has multiple copies of Orcish Bowmasters in his hand. So playing, the Fable normally would be really, really strong. On this board state, it's a little bit scary.
So I imagine this one is stripping away the Fable, just because that's the most imminently castable card. But am I okay? Connor agrees.
I mean, it's hard to really decide to take a Thoughtseize and just let your opponent play a Fable, because even if you're Bradley here and you're scared of the Orcish Bowmaster triggers, you don't need to loot away any cards with Fable. Fable's still gonna give you a good amount of value. Make you a 2/2. Then once the 2/2 gets attacked with, hard casting Fury is imminent.
Oh boy, how about this way of casting Fury? Thoughtseize it from your opponent's hand and then cast it off of your own Voidwalker.
Really just showing the power of Dati Voidwalker here. We have seen so many crazy cards cast off of it. It honestly, that card has surprised me how powerful it is.
So Noah, you set us up as let's keep an eye on Fury advantage, and in this case, it's definitely Bradley Brown. There are just not that many answers to Fury available to Rakdos Evoke player, especially one who's down on resources and can't necessarily cast a Fury of their own. So yeah, this is Connor really scrambling, having to find both an answer to the Fury and somehow establish a winning position of his own.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Connor, you're really hoping that one of those 2 cards in Bradley's hand is not a copy of Undying Malice, is not a copy of Feign Death, because then even if you're able to find some sort of answer to this Fury, it's just coming right back into play. So, yeah, as is on the board, you're really far behind. If you're Connor, it could be even scarier with what Bradley's got in his hand.
So I imagine this Bowmaster is going to have to jump in front of Fury. Bradley electing to just attack with the Voidwalker. Nothing tricky here. 3 damage means a lot right now. And oh man, hammering his advantage with the Fable the Mirror Breaker. I expect we're just one draw step away from Connor conceding this game.
Right, Connor only has 4 lands, so even if he draws something like a Fury, he wouldn't be able to cast it. Bradley just has far too many threats in play right now.
Bolt Fury, I mean, I guess that's step 1, but there's just too many threats at this point for that to really make the difference.
Yeah, I mean, what now? You also need a removal spell for this Dati Voidwalker on your next turn, right? Because yeah, it could just attack you for 3, but also you could cast Lightning Bolt with it.
With Chapter 2 of Fable, it's not a stretch to expect Bradley to play even yet one more threat.
Wow, Bradley noticing, hey, you just lightning bolted your Fury, right? I have Dati Voidwalker in play. Is that Fury under my Voidwalker? It is.
I'll take both of those, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just an embarrassment of riches here for Bradley as far as, have lethal damage worth of creatures in play, have a plethora of options for this Dati Voidwalker just in case, Connor has something else. So I'd say we're going to the sideboard really quick.
Ask a question away from the table. Let's keep perspective that as viewers, we're going, okay, this game is decided, let's get on to the next one. But these players are playing for high stakes. They want to do their best job. So you definitely cannot blame them for taking an extra beat to just make sure everything is clean. They understand what's going on. I would do it too.
Exactly. I know personally, one of the worst feelings that I ever have had in Magic is just being super far ahead in some sort of game and then making some monumental mistake and it costing me. So I really respect, Bradley here taking a second, collecting himself, asking a judge some questions, just trying to really make sure that he has everything in this game polished and figured out to take it down.
I'll anecdotally, I'll tell you one really painful mistake that I've seen Rakdos scam players make, which is if you somehow steal an opposing creature, like let's say what happened in this game, you Dothy Voidwalker a Fury, then your opponent bolts the Fury. If you play Undying Evil on it, that thing's going to come back under your opponent's control. So that is a way to really badly mess up a game that it looked like you're going to win. Be careful of walking into weird stuff like that.
I really agree. That is a great point. For the same reason,
Okay.
that this Fury went under the Dati Voidwalker, it will also not come into play under your control.
So as expected, that was just pretty clean-cut win for Bradley Brown. Connor McKenzie scooping him up, and the players going to sideboarding. This is going to remain pretty close to a pure mirror match, but the one subtle difference that I do want to keep an eye on is the graveyard hate. We've talked a lot about, do you want to sideboard in Leyline of the Void against Rakdos Evoke? Do you want the maximum number of ley lines, or are you just sprinkling in one or two here and there? What about Bradley Brown's Nihil Spellbombs? Are those cards that you're going to be reaching for after sideboarding? So I want to see how the players choose to answer these questions. I also want to know your instincts, Noah. I mean, what would you like to have in your deck after sideboarding if you had access to ley lines and Nihil Spellbombs? What do you think's best?
Yeah, I mean, initially just looking at the list, I really, really like the way that Bradley Brown's deck is set up for this matchup post board. I can only assume that he's bringing in these Shieldreds, which are incredibly hard to answer. As I've talked about multiple times, the only real answer here for Shieldred is going to be Terminate. So, and when it comes to Nihil Spellbomb and when it comes to Chalice, Leyline of the Void, I would prefer to be on the side of Nihil Spellbomb. It is, the sort of card that you could draw at any point later in the game, keep in play, and it kind of gives you some value back. Whereas these ley lines, they have diminishing returns. Having one in your opening hand could be pretty impactful. But as we were talking about earlier, Reed, I don't think this matchup is one that is going to come down to these Feigned Deaths. Is going to come down to these Undying Malices. Occasionally there could be a turn one double grief to really make things happening. I think, especially post board, the matchup slows down a bit. There's going to be a lot of 1-for-1 trading between both players, and then whoever is able to come out with more 2-for-1s than the other player is going to be, drastically far ahead. So you don't want to dilute your deck with these Leyline of the Voids necessarily.
Sure. So kind of planning for things to go to top decks and then configuring your deck in such a way that that's not a bad situation for you.
Yeah, totally. Like a lot of these, I would say more like Jundy matchups of the past or like grindy matchups. Yeah, you'll still want to keep discard spells, at least most of them, but you have to think about how the game is going to progress past these first couple turns because of how much interaction each player has, how hard it is to actually break through and outright just kill a player. These games are going to be going on for a number of turns. It's rare that it's decided by, oh, I played my Ragavan, my opponent never had an answer for it. It's a much more back and forth game than it is going to be one sided. So really important that all of your spells are very impactful.
All right, well, let's see if that proves to be true. We have players looking at their opening hand, and oh, Connor McKenzie starting with the ley line of the void. Some amount of randomness, just for the record, in terms of how that matches up against an opposing hand. Sometimes a Rakdos player will keep a sketchy hand on the strength of that Feign Death and pitch Elemental. Other times it's like, oh, okay, well, I just had Thoughtseize, Daughty Voidwalker, and I don't care about Leyline.
Exactly. So, I mean, I feel like that is what we're going to be seeing here from Bradley, right? When you look at Connor's hand, yeah, it's not bad. He's got this Fury that's going to be a really important one. He's also got this Grief. But the turn one Thoughtseize from Bradley, taking away the Daughty Voidwalker, kind of leaves Connor not doing very much. Yeah, he got to go first, which is a huge advantage, but will it even be able to capitalize on it? Bradley has gets to go second, gives himself a little bit more cards, also has this Thoughtseize on turn one. So basically, he's already up a few cards on Connor if this ley line ends up not mattering.
Yeah, it's true. And then you saw Bradley Thoughtseize away the one card that would have been castable for Connor, leaving Connor just one Grief, one Fury, no second colored card for either one. Though we know that that's likely to change in the course of just a small couple of turns. I actually noticed Connor picked up Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which is, I think you could make a case that that is just the single best card to draw at this stage in the game.
I mean, that is going to be excellent for Connor, just like as a sort of bridge to get from 3 mana to 4 mana to possibly hardcast this Grief, then look to start hardcasting this Fury. And I think, backing up this ley line with, a bunch of impactful spells every turn, it could end up mattering, the ley line so far in the game, it doesn't look like it's done very much. We don't know if there's an Undying Malice or a Feign Death sitting in Bradley's hand, but I honestly doubt it. So, not doing all that much. Also, it is stopping anything super scary from happening to you.
So pretty interesting there, Bradley with the dashed Ragavan. It's good here. It's just not a card that I was certain we would see after sideboarding based on the way it matches up against Orcish Bowmasters. And notably, Bradley was on the draw this game where Ragavan's going to be at its worst. So if he has it on the draw, we could probably deduce that he just likes the card and we'll have it both play and draw.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, Reed. I feel a very similar way. It is a little bit surprising to see. But here I think we're seeing the biggest payoff that Bradley decided for his sideboard for these matchups in Shieldred.
And man, this is a standard or a pioneer technique where you play the Shieldred right before your opponent's gonna hit chapter 2 on Fable of the Mirror Breaker just for the maximum punish.
I mean, if you're Connor here, it sucks because your hand doesn't have very much to deal well with the Shieldred. So naturally you want to be drawing more cards, but drawing more cards is going to make you lose life to the Shieldred. So he's sort of caught in a really tough position where he needs to find an answer to the Shieldred. It's not in his hand, but also finding an answer to the Shieldred is costly.
Oh, I love this from Connor. This is exactly how I would play the turn. I would just stand pat and not loot, and then start the turn by attacking with Goblin Shaman token. You get your treasure if your opponent blocks. You get to spend 5 mana for Fury post combat. That's a great exchange for you. If your opponent takes it, well, hey, you got free damage and treasure, and now you just play your grief.
Yeah, really smart play there from Connor.
This is Sheoldred is a great card. It's no doubt the most powerful card in the matchup and on the battlefield. But I do want to make a point that this is not the same Sheoldred that we saw from Ian's mono black deck, where you're gaining 8 life per turn from your One Ring tap. This card is hypothetically beatable if Connor just builds out a big board and he gets Reflection of Kiki Jiki to start copying things. If he sets up double blocks where Sheoldred can't really get into combat that easily. So this is not necessarily a answer Sheoldred or I lose kind of situation. It's just a Sheoldred's a really powerful card kind of situation.
It's super tough here, to decide what to take with this grief if you're Connor. Naturally you look at the Fury and think, yeah, I kind of need to answer the Fury. But, as you were saying, Reed, Bradley's deck doesn't really have the 1-2 punch like Ian's with the Sheoldred and the One Ring. But, with Fable the Mirror Breaker, you can loot away some cards, draw some extra cards. You still do a pretty good job of gaining a ton of life just off of its existence. So here, Connor is thinking, do I just want to take the Fury, which is probably Bradley's most powerful card in his hand? Or, am I worried about the synergy between the Fable of the Mirror Breaker and the Sheoldred? And, and that's not even to mention the grief, if Connor has something really good in his hand that he's planning on keeping, like the Fury that we know about, maybe he doesn't want Bradley to cast grief on the following turn. There's just so many options here for Connor.
Oh, that's what he takes. Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, Noah. The main takeaway for me is that Connor can't be pleased to see that hand because there are multiple devastating cards that Bradley has access to. That Fury, I mean, I'm really scared of that because that's going to prevent Connor from getting to really make any use of Reflection of Kiki Jiki.
I mean,
It's all about Fury supremacy, as you said. So it's do you take away the opponent's Fury with your discard spell, or you take away their grief so you can keep your own Fury?
tough. It's really tough. And then Bradley has a really tough decision here, right? Yeah, Ragavan not too bad here, but is it worth it, to just clear off Connor's board while you can, really put on the pressure here with the Sheoldred? Or, are the creatures not very important? Can you take another hit for 5? Will you be gaining enough life? And I think that, he might be leaning a little bit towards, look, I get to make a 2-2 here. I can just trade off my 2-2s if I'd like. And I really, really value this Sheoldred highly. I'll get chapter 2 of my Fable the following turn, gaining me some extra life. And I'm sure that I'll find a land where the 3/3 body, of my Fury is extremely valuable. So I like this play from Bradley, kind of, realizing that he is in a really commanding position in this game, enough so where he isn't feeling pressured to sort of, yeah, even if it's a 2-for-2 trade with this Fury, it could just be a 2-for-0 essentially.
So are you thinking you're not going to put your Sheoldred in combat? You're not going to risk that against the opposing Fury?
I mean, certainly I'm not blocking with my Sheoldred. And then seeing open deck lists, and knowing, let's see, how many lightning bolts are even in Connor's deck? Well, 2. How many is he gonna have post board? Well, probably 2. That is the only thing that you could have here to answer my Sheoldred. I'm down to attack, not really down to block.
Yeah, I like it. Attacking is safer than blocking, and it's best to do one or the other to make sure you get full value out of your cards. Not for nothing, when a Sheoldred is ticking down the opponent's life total 2 per turn, getting in a big chunk of damage like an uncontested attack for 4, that really does cut the clock.
Yeah, is there ever any consideration to chump blocking if you're Connor? No, right? I mean, your griefs are just so valuable. It's like, yeah, the Shieldred's scary, but it's so hard to block.
Yeah, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you need a really powerful board if you're going to overwhelm the Shieldred, but you also need your life total, or else you're at risk of just dying out of nowhere. So there's really no good option from Connor's perspective. So far, I've liked basically every decision um, Connor has made, and possibly even every decision both players have made in this game. It's been a really good one to watch.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Reed. We're getting really lucky to see some, some players who clearly they're not here in the top four of this tournament by mistake. They've put in the work to learn the ins and outs of their deck and are putting on a show for us and playing some really good Magic.
So this is Cast Fury, kill off Goblin Shaman token. Bradley fetches for a Blood Crypt at the end of the turn. Now he's cleaned out because he did choose to expend his resources evoking Fury last turn, but he's going to get the Chapter 2 of Fable of the Mirror Breaker. He's got his life total nice and padded based on having Shieldred on the battlefield for a few turns. So really great opportunity for Bradley to find something this turn. That said, he does need something because he's facing down the really devastating combination of Reflection plus Fury. Oh, double loot. Gotta find something.
I mean, the plus side of double looting is always that you gain a bunch of life off your Shieldred. The downside is that meant neither of the cards that you had drawn were any good. So these two cards are going to be some really important ones, and it's looking like they're good ones.
Yeah, that Terminate, that is just exactly what Bradley was hoping for.
On top of the Dottie Voidwalker, it's actually massive, right? Because now, even if Connor is able to find an answer for this Shieldred, Bradley has a Fury that he can cast.
And now, just like we talked about last turn, the Shieldred crashes in. Connor's like, oh, I don't really have the luxury to chump block that, but now I'm at 5 against a shadow creature, a Shieldred that's dealing me 2 every turn, and he really needs something quite special to get back into this.
Yeah, I think Shieldred is just the most impressive creature that I've seen cast all weekend. Every single time that she's in play, someone needs to find an answer for her, or she's just going to take over the game. And you would expect, these decks to be prepared to be dealing with these larger creatures. But I've really felt that every single list that we've seen is more worried about answering specific artifacts or dealing with a couple X ones or having some lightning bolts. I have not seen very many clean answers to Shieldred in almost any of the decks.
Okay, so what Connor can do here is play Dothy Voidwalker, lightning bolt the opposing Voidwalker, activate Reflection to copy Voidwalker and cast something with a void counter. Although the prerequisite here is you need a blocker to stop the Shieldred from killing you. So there's almost some really cool plays you could make, but it's tricky. Dothy Voidwalker, by the way, you choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a void counter. So you cannot cast your own stuff that has been exiled to opposing Voidwalkers. There's also this interesting tension of Leyline of the Void plus Dothy Voidwalker. If I was playing, I would have to ask a judge exactly how that works. But in the meantime, it looks like Connor is going to be forced to. Well, he's picking up, he's scooping him up. Not sure what the killing blow was there. It seemed like he was going to be able to block the Shieldred, bolt the Voidwalker, and see one more draw step, but maybe Bradley found something to drive the final nail into the coffin.
Yeah, I also couldn't see exactly what happened at the end there, but it was looking, like it was just a tough spot in general there if you're Connor. Bradley really showcasing the power of these two copies of Shieldred from his sideboard. and just showing that he was ready for this matchup.
Oh, I see. Chad has pointed out that Bradley didn't need to draw anything because he could just tap his Voidwalker, cast the Fury, and connect with Sheoldred, and that's that.
Oh yeah, there was right. He had the Fury under the Voidwalker.
Yeah. So was Connor supposed to Lightning Bolt before passing the turn?
Yeah,
Again, kind of
definitely.
splitting hairs here as it was a really, really tough situation. But in any case, it is Bradley advancing to the finals, getting out of the Rakdos Evoke mirror match. We're going to do a quick break, and then we're going to see some four-color Omnath action.